Welcome to the Council of Dad presents the X-Men 97 episode 1 and 2 report card. I am your host, Keith Darth Pooh Newman, and with me is my life mate, Matt D.
Yes, life mate. We've known each other for 30 years.
Yeah, some would say too long, but not long enough. So we're going to be giving our honest thoughts, our feedback on the first and second episode. This is going to be an ongoing series, so we are going to get into it. We're going to get into the twists and the turns. We're going to but there's a lot of judgment that I think could be passed down on this iteration of or continuation of it. And so, Matt, can you explain to everyone how we're going to break down like what the categories are, because there's a lot going on that we can judge.
Sure. So we'll look at a few different areas that kind of stood out to us that we want to contrast with the original X-Men 97 series and get a sense of how it kind of fits into the modern day MCU. And we're going to use a scoring system, a rating scale of 1 through 5 X's. And we'll be looking at categories such as continuity.
You get like some lasers going, like pew pew, with some X's.
Yeah.
That everyone loves, like pew pew pew.
Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah.
Continuity, art style and animation, camp factor, and social factor. Where does it fit into the social fiber of today, and how has it changed since we've seen cartoons like this going back into the 90s?
Yeah. So just like the reason Matt and I kind of do things like this, we would seriously break down the social issues of Star Wars when we were in high school. And we would just go so deep into it. And it was just a lot of fun. And we realized, I think a lot of other people do this. I don't think this is a unique thing. I don't think we were special by any stretch of the imagination. So if people have any kind of comments, you have thoughts on it, I don't care if you like it. You don't have to like this video. I don't even know what that's about. But just if you have like feedback, throw it in there, right? We're going to read the comments. We're going to get to it. We will throw them up the week after and get to your comments. If you think we're not even right, just put it in. I don't care. Put it there.
Yeah, or if you catch something in there that we don't talk about, comment on it. Marvel's kind of epic level at this point about putting all kinds of goodies behind the scenes, and all they reference things that the average pedestrian fan is not going to catch, but diehards like Keith, who has comic books and such, they're gonna know the hidden meaning between some of that stuff. And I think with a show like this that's a clear throwback, we're gonna see a bunch of that stuff.
To be fair, I'm just slightly less pedestrian, more motorized, but there's some really mega nerds out there, which I have the utmost respect for, because they can go, actually, in 1967, there was an issue. And that's the ability for people to recall that is like, oh my, how do you do that? But there are people out there that will scour or just know where to look. It's indexed properly, but good on them. So we're going to jump into the first category of continuity. And continuity meaning from where it left off in the 90s run into the X-Men 97, where it picks up from. So we're going to flip-flop here. I will go first on the continuity one, and then Matt, if you want to add anything, if you want to tell me I missed that, just throw it out there.
Sure.
So I'm going to give flat out what I gave it. I'm going to give it 4 X's. We're going to start out with 5 from it. Part of my problem is I'm a little confused. I don't know what's up with Professor X. I know he's dead, but where it left off in the last series, he definitely flew off in a spaceship. Like, he was like, I'm gone. So to get medical attention, of course, on a different planet with his space girlfriend, which is cool. But I don't know if they're playing with us. He's definitely coming back. He's definitely going to have a larger part on it. So I took off a part because I'm confused, and if you try and throw that as a twist later, you're gonna be like, no, duh, we knew he was off planet. We watched the original series. So I took off for that. I love. I was thinking about giving it a bonus point, but they identified Storm as an Omega level mutant.
Yeah, they flat out said it.
Props, right? And that's like, I love that they do that reference. They're giving her, and I think it also kind of adds to like the fact that happens to her later, that she generally she just loses her powers.
Right.
So I think that's like a good, like, oh dang, this weapon is really strong, and if it could take out a mega level mutant like Storm. And then they merged a few details, and I'm okay with that. But for the general continuity, it felt like I had just turned on and I just missed a like, it was over summer hiatus, the way it kind of pieced together. And I well done to the story runner here. He knew exactly where to look and where to pick from, and I appreciate that there's these awkward things that are still like lurking from the original series that they are still pulling it. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I agree. I also gave it 4 X's for continuity. I think you're a little more familiar with the source material than I am, but for I think they struck a good balance between trying to stay true to the original cartoon, um, but also referencing things that newer fans might recognize, because there's going to be a whole group of people out there that have never seen the cartoon, that have never read the comics. Their only inroad is through the movies, the recent MCU films. So for those fans, some of them are going to be a little bit confused. They're going to wonder why Rogue is flying around, why her and Magneto are able to touch each other, that kind of thing. And a lot of it goes back and it pays homage to the original cartoon. So like you said, it's almost as if it didn't skip a beat and picked up right where it left off in the 90s. So that's great storytelling. But overall, I just thought it was great. I thought the continuity was great. I was afraid that they were gonna kind of dumb it down a little bit per se, because they were gonna be afraid that people were lost in the storyline. And I think they stood their ground and kind of pushed through right where it did leave off. So I gave it 4 X's.
And one thing to add, they in the first episode they did a kind of a recap of the Sentinel storyline
Right.
from the original, which I think is going to still springboard into an additional storyline from this. Sentinels are wildly popular. Why you wouldn't use them? And that's going to like kind of go into like the Sentinels and the next category. We're going to talk about art, but I'll get further into it with that, and what they did for them blew me away. But spoilers.
Yeah.
Uh,
I thought that with the Sentinel reference, even though they haven't used the Sentinels in the MCU, they know that the cat. They know most fans are familiar with the Fox movies. So they reference Trask, they reference the Sentinels. That's all stuff that Fox and the X-Men from there have tackled on the screen.
yeah, for sure. And we're gonna give you some spoilers. So if you haven't watched them, you probably should. While you're watching this, we didn't give a spoiler. Maybe you should like put one in the beginning, Matt.
Yeah,
But
we're
there
outside
is
the 72-hour window, so we're gonna talk about spoilers.
gonna talk about them, and that's the way that's the way it's gonna crumble. But the next category, art, it blew me away. I have to say this. There are changes. I don't want anyone to think that this is a one-to-one, because they were trying to make the show as cheap as possible. And to do so, they just kept outsourcing the animators for the series. And there was like a animation kind of to it that was like just a repeating thing.
Yeah,
Like a cape was waving, and then it
right.
would wave, and then it would wait. And it was there was an uncanny valley to it. And it got worse and worse as this show went on because of them outsourcing the animators.
I think part of that is also deliberate. I think part of that is like everybody remembers the cartoons from the 70s, 80s, and 90s where
Yeah.
you would see somebody's in a car and you'd see the scenery pass and it's the same scenery over and over.
Yeah.
So part of that is they're paying homage to that type of animation.
Was the same artist as who did the Spider-Man animated series. Like that's the same, and it's also the identical art style
Right.
for the series. I like that they're not doing the moving shadow and it's a lot tighter. So I think I'm pretty certain they're using a blend of like 3D and 2D. There's definitely animation going on in there, but there's definitely some 3D. Like for instance, the intro cards, which were the original. We should have mentioned that for continuity, that they use the original like flashcards, the backgrounds behind them when they're introducing them. That was pretty cool. But do you have any issues with them changing Storm's hair at all?
No, no. I thought for the most part, aesthetically, they stayed true to the original cartoon. But like you just said, you could tell that there were changes in how it's produced. You could see, I could catch the differences between something that was hand animated versus something they're obviously using exclusively, computer generated stuff now, and some 3D modeling in there as well.
Yes.
Like you said, but it looks clean. It looks clean, and they even used a lot of effects that make it look older as well, because they want to have that original look to it.
Yeah.
So I bet that the original draft that they had looked a lot more closer to cartoons we'd see today, but they scaled it back a little bit just for the sake of having that continuity.
And that's just them paying respect to, I think, the source material that it's coming
Right.
from, because it's sourced from many different places now, and
Yeah.
you're going to see that. Like, it's not just exclusive to they're pulling from X-Men the original series, which also pulled from X-Men. I had to pull it out. I had to
Pull it out.
my original run. I could have just done this on my Marvel app, to be honest with you, and I just could have reread they're all in there, but I wanted to kind of like,
But you got them.
yeah, I wanted like, like I wanted to see what it was. I mean, I'm kind of like, it's pretty cool. Like how they did it, right? They're paying total respect to it. The art, it's not exactly Jim Lee style art, which we all, that was around the time, I think the majority of, if you're like me, you were 12 years old, you ran home after school to watch X-Men on Fox. This is what we grew up. We grew up with like looking at really cool Jim Lee art cover on comics. And we didn't quite get that with X-Men, but X-Men 97 is even kind of using the some of the X-Men Jim Lee uniforms and outfits, which is, it's again, major respect has been taken for this show, and I'm very happy. One of the things, did you notice this, Matt? They retconned the helmet, Magneto's helmet.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, but it makes sense since they're saying Professor X is in there. So that's the main reason he had it anyway, was to protect him from that.
But he did it in the show, right? In the show, it was just definitely it was a fashion accessory. It was
Yeah.
it was more like it was protection for his head, like, because it doesn't, I mean, maybe someone's gonna fire a wooden bullet. I don't
I thought his whole getup was very different. The big letter M. He didn't have his normal stuff on. It was a different color palette that they used for him. The hair.
It's pulled from the comics. That's Asteroid M stuff. And they also did Asteroid M storyline, but he didn't have the very comic accurate Asteroid M in the original series, so they did Asteroid M, and they're like, and they also did that with Jean. I think they referenced Jean. I haven't worn this outfit since, and it was from like an 80s run. So it was even before. So it was like, they're really like kind of,
they're incorporating different stuff.
We existed as a team before, like, for instance, the original 68 team was on the wall.
Right.
Before they used Blue Beast or Angel was there, and again, it was very well done. Homage, homage. The art style, I gave it 5 X's.
Y- Yeah, yeah. The art style looked amazing. Obviously, they have to go back and reference a bunch of that stuff. Otherwise, it's not X-Men '97. It's just a new show if it looks too modern. So the fact that they take the effort to go back and make it look the way it is, the way um, fans and I think that I think in a lot of ways the show was made for people in our age group, people who were teens
For sure,
and youngers in the '90s. Um,
hundred
and
percent.
Yeah, because there's just a bunch of stuff in there, a bunch of goodies that younger kids, unless they're all in and they have comics of their own, and they went back and they've read all the source material, they're not going to know what a lot of it is. But
And but they're not like they're not in a way it's still followable. My 12-year-old
sure,
was just fine with it. He was like, "Dude, I'm not going back and watching 5 seasons of a cartoon. Like it's
yeah,
not happening." Okay, bro. Just watch this. And he was like, I love it. So that's really cool that he saw that. He was really into it. He's more of like an invincible kind of I don't listen.
it's brutal.
That's
That show's
brutal, and
brutal.
they love that. All
Yeah,
the kids love it. Like my students talk about it at school. They're very into it. It's kind of crazy, but Rick and Morty is like another one that would never have been like something we watched at 12.
right.
Never. But listen, you know what they did? They fixed the only time they used kind of like janky animation was Jubilee when she went into the club and she's kind of like dancing to the
The,
music.
just
They
the
kind of
fireworks.
yeah, well, not when she was dancing. They kind of really that was a lot of 3D animation. That was really cool. And I think that was a nice moment. They can really convey human moments through animation, which is like well, and we'll talk about some of those. Some of them are weird to me,
Yeah,
but that's X-Men for you, right? It wouldn't be an X-Men story if there wasn't some weird tension somewhere between any characters, right?
right.
Um before we get into the weird tensiony stuff and all that, right? Before you get into that, our third category is the camp nostalgia factor. I know it sounds like it's similar to continuity, but it's really not. Continuity, I think, is more
Yeah.
technical, where camp is how do you feel, right? What does it do for you? And Matt, what does X-Men 97 camp do for you?
I gave it at first. I gave it a full 5 X's because I thought it hit the spot there. And then when I went back and rewatched it, you could see the effort they did make. And like you said, there's bleed over between campy and continuity. Uh, but after watching it a second time, I didn't feel like it was as campy. I felt like there were certain things they definitely put in there because they want certain parts of the original comics referenced. But it was not. It was done in a kind of a funny, nostalgic way that didn't read as campy as I originally thought it did. So I would say overall I give it a 4 instead of a 5 campy. What about you?
So the camp to me came in waves, right? There's I saw how man this series is way more serious than the original. So, you've kind of I started chipping away at the idea
Hmm.
that this is made for our age group, but the waves of campiness that occurred for me. So what drove me to pull out the comics, believe it or not, was the basketball scene when they're all playing basketball.
Yeah,
I'm like, I've seen that before. Like I remember just seeing like Remy LeBeau without a shirt on and like Harry Wolverine. I was like, this is like okay. So I pulled it out and sure enough, it's in there. It's almost like they used a storyboard for the comics. And so that for me, camp slash nostalgia.
hmm,
Wow.
yeah,
The second time I already mentioned this, but this kind of really laid into it for me. um, believe it or not, using the original title cards was really cool.
Yeah, I
You
thought that
know
was a nice touch.
that, and they cleaned it up. So they're cleaning up all the animation. They made those look really crisp, so it pulls you away a little bit. I think
Mhm.
that using like a little bit of degaussing effect, or maybe like trying to. I just made that up. Is degaussing like a thing?
Yeah, and yes,
Cool, cool. That I made that up on the spot.
that is a thing. Yeah.
Like for instance, to me, my X-Men, when Cyclops said that,
To me, my X-Men.
I was like, oh my god,
Yeah.
yeah, that was so corny. It's so cheesy, but it was so dope.
Yeah, you have to put it in there.
Yeah, yeah. And they use that again, like at the end of the episode with Magneto. Once he
Mhm.
gains control, he goes, "Everything belongs to me, my X-Men." So he
Yeah.
at the very everything changed, he owned to me, my X-Men. He basically just said it in a very overt way, and it was very, very well done. I hope that was on purpose. If not, I subliminally inserted that whole notion. I am a huge fan of them putting up the OG squad on the wall and Scott Summers reminiscing with it. And they, like I said, they use some of the jank animation that I was so annoyed at, but they used it correctly,
Right.
that I was like, wow. So like when I say waves, like, because for instance, one of the things that's way different is the Sentinels are correctly proportional now.
Yeah, they're
Like
gigantic.
they made sense.
Yeah.
But there were like episodes where they did not make sense. Like sometimes they would like you would see a sentinel and he would be outside of the mall, and he'd be so big outside of the mall, like towering, like he had to bend over. But then he gets inside the mall and he's as tall as the mall. It's like I remember that. I remember going like, this doesn't make any sense. But you have to slap yourself even at 12 and go, it's a cartoon.
Right. Scale's a issue in hand animation.
But they did it very well there, and I'm glad of it. The camp I gave it, because they did it appropriately with enough and respecting us and all that. I think I gave it a 5. I gave the camp factor a 5.
Okay.
Did you have any issues with digging deep for the social aspect of it, the social like issues?
No, I thought it was kind of front and center with the storyline and at the cliffhanger at the end and everything, and how they represented some of the characters. I thought it was right there. I mean, Marvel's always been that way. They've never been afraid to go after big issues like civil rights and
Right.
you know women's suffrage and all that stuff. Which is a great thing because it's you know sometimes things like cartoons and comics are what make those issues real for kids. So growing up, aside from getting it in school and the whole, through that pipeline of information, it makes it something a little more tangible for a different audience. Um, but yeah, I thought they did the same thing. X Men has always been kind of like a parallel to civil rights movement and equality for all, and they picked up right where they left off in that storyline.
What was your standout moments for like what has changed on social issues from the original series to the current series? Like what like there
I thought
definitely has been progress, but
mhm.
like
there, there
what did you think of that?
there's a couple like low key scenes. In particular, the one with Wolverine and Morph. Uh, they're they're tickling a very specific, nuanced issue there with sexuality, and it wasn't blatantly obvious, but I caught it at first glance right away, and but I wasn't sure if I was reading into it too much. And when I went online after the episode, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm not reading into it. It's everywhere."
It is.
It was kind of funny, but it was so I wasn't sure exactly what they were going for with that, but they're making a statement that's kind of
Yeah.
slipped in there.
Well, okay. So this is one of the one of the retoolings of the show, for anyone who knows, Morph was originally definitely a he.
Mhm.
He. Now Morph is they. Morph is a non-gender, non and highly fluid, like pun intended, because it's a legitimate shapeshifter.
Yep.
So it makes absolute sense to do this, right?
Sure.
I'm for using characters for purpose of using characters, and then Marvel has a way of using like some of like absurdist takes,
Mhm.
and the fact that they are literally goo, or like I think they. I'm just gonna take me a while because I'm just so used to Morph being a he, but I think they are trying to just capture how it's relationships may be hard for someone in this position, because I I don't know, it got weird, the Morph and Wolverine interaction.
Yeah, I
Um
wasn't I wasn't sure what to make of it at first. I wasn't because at first they seemed to be playing around where he had shape shifted it into Sabretooth. And I'm like, oh, they're just having a friendly fight, kind of messing them. It looked like they were horsing around. And when he morphed again, I was kind of like, wait, what's going on here exactly? And it kind of cut away and didn't return to the
so it's kind of unhealthy
original
to
mem.
me. It's like, even if it's a friendship, okay? Even if it's a friendship, let's just say it's, yo, Morph, you're my boy, you're my whatever, you're my
Yeah.
platonic friend. It's very unhealthy because you saw Morph turned into Jean Grey at one point
Hmm.
in the club. So he's in, and listen, Morph has zero scruples. He doesn't like, he's like, he turned right into Professor X. He was like walking
Yeah.
around talking like Professor X. So Morph is this light-hearted character. He has a past, and I think they kind of alluded it to in the title card when you see him, because he has a title card now. He did not in the original, but
Yeah.
in his title card, you see Mr. Sinister. It's definitely Mr. Sinister's silhouette.
Right.
And so that's cool that they're going to bring it, because they have to.
Yeah.
Now, if they're introducing maybe a clone of Jean Grey at the end of this
Mhm.
episode, the cliffhanger, Madeline Pryor or not, that's a
Yeah.
Doctor Sinister, that's a Mr. Sinister storyline.
Yeah.
So,
I think we knew before Marvel. I don't know if it was a showrunner or who it was exactly, but we knew months earlier that they
the
had already
toys,
said that they were coming out with Mister
yeah,
Sinister.
the toy line ruined it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. But I was to get back to the Morph and Wolverine thing. If even if it's like a romantic relationship, whether it's a platonic one, it doesn't, with their friends, it doesn't matter. I think it's unhealthy either way you look at it, because it seems to be the only way Morph can get Wolverine to pay attention to them is if it's someone personal to Wolverine,
Right.
or something, like hates Sabretooth, loves Jean Grey, like definitely pushing at, like, turns into Xavier. Now I know he turns into other but like his one-on-one interactions with Logan, Wolverine, are not healthy.
Yeah, they're kind of extreme opposite ends of the spectrum in how he's trying to appeal to him. My question was, okay, is this something that they're establishing as a new routine with them, or is that's it? It felt like it was something that pre-existed. So prior to us seeing it in the cartoon,
Yeah.
this is the way they kind of carry on. Um, I don't know. I think a lot of people, I can see a lot of people out there not seeing it as a negative thing for him. I think there's people out there who are going to look at it and say, "Oh, here's somebody who's trying to provide comfort when his friend needs it, but he's also trying to, get him hyped up and fighting and all that stuff when he needs that." So I think there will be people out there that kind of see it in different ways.
Yeah.
Um, but this is definitely, it's 2024. I don't think it's even gonna bat an eye with a lot of people. We see gender bent characters in all different cartoons now,
Yeah.
different shows. You look at The Boys, you can even see where they have a character. Or no, it wasn't The Boys, but the
Oh, the boys, the
Gen
spinoff.
U, I think it was.
Yeah,
Gen U. Yeah.
the spinoff.
There's a
I
character who.
I didn't catch the spinoff.
Oh, okay. There's a character in there that goes back and forth between being a male and a female.
And
So
if it
it's
makes sense to the story, I love it, right?
sure.
If it's pushed in there because sure. And that's okay depending on how much you talk about it. Because for me, there's many transgender people I know in my life, and it's never kind of like the focus of the conversation. We just have a conversation about what we would have a conversation about.
Right.
So and again, I hope that it serves a purpose. There is definitely an intolerance to it out there that definitely, I think that's a good place to hit. It's pretty covert. Like, I know you picked up on it, I picked up on it, and half of Reddit picked up on it, but we're socially awkward as is.
Oxword.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense. What did you give for the social issues? And do you have any other weird social issues that you thought of? Like, there was definitely progress, right? Progress from
Sure.
the original series where we hate all muties to like there's a human mutant club and they're hanging out and dancing and there's a lot more tolerance.
Right. I gave it a 3 overall because I felt like it was kind of sprinkled in there a little bit.
Yeah.
Even though the main storyline, the main theme of the entire show, to me, reads as a parallel to civil rights. I felt like they didn't dig into it too much. You have the whole storyline with Magneto. He pops up, and then next thing you know, they come and arrest him and are trying to put him on trial. And how does that fit? And you have the element of all the people trying to fight the mutants that are obviously they don't want them integrated in society in any way at all, even the ones that don't have powers. And that was one thing they showed right away was that one kid that got captured in the opening sequence,
Yeah.
who was not using his powers at all, but he was a mutant and he still had the ability. They still wanted to get him, put the collar on him. I think right there they're sending a message. They're showing that, hey, even people who their differences don't affect us in the day to day in any meaningful way, you're still going to have that group of people that are opposed to them just because they're different.
Yeah, spot on. And I like the idea, like, hey, it looks honky dory all on the outside and there is good progress, but don't confuse motion with progress, right? Because they are two totally different concepts, but motion could look like progress, but motion doesn't necessarily mean progress.
Right.
And in this case, I think the villain, Trask, said this. That was great. He said, tolerance is extinction. Which is like a dead on, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. And I'm not talking even politically. I'm just talking about any issue. That means something different to you. Tolerance is extinction, which is pretty deep. Right.
You know what it made me think of? You know what it honestly made? It made me think in sociology. They now know that Cro-Magnon man and Neanderthals were alive, basically coexisted on Earth at the same time.
Yep.
Right. They know there was breeding between them. They know all that. And the theory widely believed now is that basically that led to the extinction of Neanderthals because they didn't have the same the same mental capacity. They couldn't make tools and they couldn't do anything. And in a world where you have two different types like that, the one who is stronger is going to wipe the other out. So that is essentially the whole lesson that you see playing out here in the X-Men storyline.
Yeah.
The thought that humans can't coexist with mutants because ultimately the mutants have powers. They will succeed and take over and wipe out humankind. That's the greater fear of all the villains that we see.
Yeah, 100% right on that, because there's always that lurking understanding of, hey, coexist, but at what point do I not matter anymore?
Right.
And so there's like that factor, that kind of like that paranoia factor that I think we'll slip back into. I think we're gonna get back into like mutant hating, and I believe, because it's ominous. Magneto says, the excellent delivery too. Do not make me disappoint you.
Do not make me let you down.
Like, what a threat! Like that is a full on threat.
Yeah.
Do not make me disappoint you. Meaning, don't give me a reason to just slaughter you.
Right.
This is benevolence at its finest, I guess.
Well, it's a flex because it shows, I'm so powerful that I don't even need to use language that's gross and scary. I don't need to make threats in the open. I can hide it in the language, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, he doesn't yell. He never yells. He's very rarely, seldom. Magneto is seldom emotional display to anybody. There are times where he has, obviously, but he is definitely the chillest murderer out there, because he definitely has murdered.
That's scarier.
Yeah. Well, he also, we saw blood for the first time. But remember, did you catch that? There was blood.
From the basketball game?
Yeah, that, and then Scott, I think he got popped in the mouth by
The guy
the
towards the end?
executioner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty wild that we saw blood in that. That was never, there was no blood in the original. That was definitely a no. So I gave this, for the factors, I gave it a 3.5.
Okay.
So you got to edit a half a 1. That's on you.
1
slash. So that's what we got. We have our report card. So what do you have your points as? Did you give it an overall score? Do you just doesn't really, the points? It doesn't matter. It's made up and it don't matter.
I mean, it does, but I had a hard time scaling it as a whole because there's so many things that are the same about it, and there's so many things that are different about it that I can't even compartmentalize it and pigeonhole it and give it an overall score. I thought it was great. I'm definitely intrigued. It just seems like there's so much stuff to dig into that I need to see what's going to happen next.
And I don't think they're gonna conflate it too much. I think they're gonna stick to storylines and they're gonna flesh them out a lot.
Yeah.
This was a storyline that they were kind of teasing at, and they also teased at this storyline a little bit in the new class, the apocalypse ending, I believe it was, with Mr. Sinister and getting blood of people. Look, I could give it a solid 4. Solid 4. It's really good, and I would even be leaning to a soft 4.5. There is definitely something there. And what I think is there is it really is going to save, I think, the MCU.
Really?
Marvel Animation, to me, it's how you can bring content to the market without oversaturating with actors. We get actor fatigue. And because of that, we stop. Oh, when is so-and-so going to do this next? When are they going to be available? Or and there's so much of that going on. I think the animation allows you to do a lot of, a lot bigger things, a lot bigger scalar things without it being so expensive. And 2, it allows you to do this Elseworld stuff and draw in a market that may not have been that interested before.
Yeah.
So there are some people like these new movies are corny. They're not that good. They don't like them. They're diehard comic fans, but I know a few. They just don't like these movies at all.
Yeah. Yeah, they've taken a hit since the start of Phase 4, definitely, and the whole change in the cinematic plot, if you will. Um,
And life has given them, like, let's be honest, real life has given Disney and Marvel like twists and turns to deal with COVID, the
Sure.
Jonathan Majors issues. So there's a lot of real things that led to this where we're at right now. But let's be honest. I think you and I thought that Secret Invasion had a great start, but we knew it just fell by episode 3 or 4. I think we said to each other, this is going to be bad.
Yeah, that one in particular, I was when they did that whole release for the lineup with the shows that they were starting out with. That was probably the one I was the most excited about initially,
Yeah.
and was the most disappointed by the time it played out. And
all those red flags when they're doing the scenes with the president, and it's like there's nobody around. Like,
yeah,
this is a hospital, and there's not like 20 Secret Service. There was just an attempt made on the president's life, but
right.
nobody's around.
Yeah, that show that's a whole other episode. That show had a lot of his issues we can talk about.
Right.
But overall, I feel like I think the general fan feels like Marvel might be spreading themselves too thin with too many different IPs that they're trying to introduce, and ultimately, the writing and everything is suffering. They're bringing in different directors from all over, and some of them are great. Some of them have amazing backgrounds, but their take on a certain character might not hit for most fans.
Well, I think you said there's so many IPs going. There's also so many big ideas going on in the MCU, like incursions. Sure. Like what the hell is an incursion to some casual, right? To someone who's a pedestrian, and that's what we're going to call you. You're pedestrians.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a pedestrian, what the hell does an incursion even mean? Incursion. I just see sometimes it colliding. I think the animation department, I think the Marvel animation is a great way to kind of explore those larger ideas. What are incursions? What do they do to timelines? How do they make them? And I think Deadpool is going to lead into a lot of this as well.
Yeah.
But I think there's a huge avenue for doing DC has the Elseworlds label for like those stories that don't happen in the main continuity.
Yeah.
And I know they have What If, and that's great, but those what ifs are only for the MCU. They've kind of made that a very strict rule, right?
Correct.
Okay. So if it's only like we're taking a tweak on an MCU, great. What about just pulling from like the pantheon of content that you could pull from, right?
Yeah.
I did not think I was going to use the word pantheon today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Should I edit it out?
No. What? What? No.
I'll keep it in there.
Why would you take that from me? What? Like, why are you trying to blow out my candle to make yours burn brighter?
I just want to steal your thunder a little bit. You got comic books. I don't have anything over here. I got no.
If
props.
you could edit it and then like just make
drink.
So, bevy is a good thing to have. I don't.
Yeah.
What do you? How do you think incursions have been handled so far?
So I get the whole Kang Dynasty timelines. I get the whole dumbed down version of string theory. I get it. I don't know if everybody gets it, and if you haven't watched when they started really kind of introducing that concept,
then
you might be a little lost in the sauce. You might be watching Doctor Strange and thinking, what the heck am I watching here?
And that's I think the amount of content that you have to absorb to understand.
Yeah.
Loki is a huge thing that they're now obviously going to use. And if someone hasn't caught Loki, what is the TVA to someone who hasn't caught the Loki shows?
Right. You have to have seen it. You have to with Deadpool coming out. It directly translates. So I mean, you have to have seen that to even know what's going to be the main storyline to that movie.
But I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be super pissed if they're not respectful of the Loki series. I love what they've done with the TVA with He Who Remains, and then when it was a Kang version, and when it like became a Loki version of it, like there's very clearly dividing. The atmosphere is different, the colors are different, the posters are different.
Yeah.
Those things are the attention to detail is very important to me. It rips me right out of it. Like I said, the whole thing with the Secret Service not being with the president, and they had one guy helping him who was easily, incapacitated by Nick Fury. He's
60-some-year-old Nick Fury.
But he a bad mother. Ooh, watch your mouth.
No, I think yeah, I agree. When I saw the first Deadpool trailer, right away I picked up on the differences for the TVA stuff.
What did you say
However,
that was like wildly?
their uniforms were different right away. The armor they were wearing,
Yeah.
the stuff, the pattern, were different from what you see.
Would you be okay if they're
show.
like shock trooper versions of them? That's why they look the way they do. Is that acceptable?
I assume there has to be already, because in the show in Loki, the second season of Loki, they acknowledged the whole thing about the war that took place, and I'm pretty sure it was a bunch of dudes running around with batons. Like I'm sure there's stuff behind the scenes they haven't introduced yet that is part of that, and I don't think they need to introduce it necessarily.
Right.
We just
Why would they prune Loki though? Like you have to think, why would they prune Loki? I like the idea, like, hey, listen, Loki's sending out this guy is too wild in the timeline, right? At the end of Deadpool 2, the end scenes, and I think they're like that's canon. He went through the time stream with Cable's time travel and pretty much did all those things. He,
messed up the timeline,
right?
Created new branches.
And again, new branches aren't bad in the Loki TVA. New branches are just fine. But if those branches then create incursions, you then have to like be careful of that.
I think overall, the real challenge that Marvel's going to have tackling the whole Kang Dynasty and everything that relates to time travel and alternate timelines, the real challenge for Marvel is going to be, how do you write this stuff in a way where you still make things matter?
Yeah.
When you watched Infinity War and Endgame, that stuff mattered. Even though they went back, they had a time travel and bring characters back. I remember the day I watched Infinity War, walking out of the theater, looking at people's faces like their dog just died. Like, it mattered to people. And when you get into things like time travel, there's no sense of anything really matters, because everything can be undone with time travel. So what is the real risk? What really happens in a storyline where you're like, because I think with certain characters, people are like, oh, they'll bring them back. Don't worry about it. They'll find a way to write them back in.
That's how I feel about every actor, right? Everyone's like, oh, our DJ is done. I feel like every actor with the right amount of money will always return.
But you can bring them back in a way that makes sense in the storyline. If we're talking about alternate realities, we've already seen Peggy Carter as Captain Britain. We know these different versions of, different variants of people are out there.
And that's why I think the MAU, did I coin that? The Marvel Animated Universe, the MAU?
I guess you did. I've never heard of it.
I listen. Kevin, call me.
I can't draw, but call me.
I'm kidding. I got him on speed dial anyway. Kevin and I, we went to I think we were in a war together. Do you guys do you think the X-Men in Deadpool, and this is the thing I've been trying to I think X-Men 97 absolutely helps the X-Men in Deadpool. Like, it doesn't hurt it in any way. I don't think it's going to be a problem for fans to see like multiple versions of X-Men before they're dropped into the MCU officially.
Right. I don't think so. I don't think it hurts it. I think at this point, if you're still a Marvel fan, if you're still watching the shows, if you have Disney Plus subscription and you're still going to the theater to see the movies, you've acknowledged that there's source material all over the place, and eventually you're going to see stuff here and there. So I don't think having the cartoon, especially as accurate as it is to the original cartoon, I don't think it detracts in any meaningful way from the MCU going forward. If anything, I think it could be used as a primer for different characters that we might see. You know, if you've never watched the show, if you're a 20-something, 30-something year old who had never read the comics, never watched the cartoons, you're seeing some characters for the first time, and those may be characters that they eventually see in the MCU. So if anything, it's going to give you a leg up on some of the stuff.
Now that we've actually recorded this, I'm now going to go and watch all the reviews from all my favorite YouTubers as well to kind of see what their take was on it. I wanted to kind of take an honest stab at this between, for our first episode here. I think we did take an honest stab at it. And if you guys, watching anything that you have pointed out, you're like, guys, that's a stretch. I don't know what you're talking about. The art sucked. It's gonna ruin Deadpool. Let us know in the comments below. And then hit if we suck, hit the down button, right? Is there still a down button on YouTube?
I think they did away with it, maybe.
I don't care. Know. Hit it, dude. I don't hit that. I don't care.
Yeah. Give a thumbs down in the comment.
Yeah, I would too. So I appreciate this first inaugural episode. We will be doing this weekly. There'll be a little bit shorter, probably in length each time as we go on, because this is the first one and it was a 2-episode premiere. But I am looking forward to X-Men 97 continuing and seeing how it's already good for 3 seasons, Matt. It's already good for 3.
That's awesome.
So we're going to have a lot of it. So I'm looking forward to talking about this with you, bud. And I will definitely let you know when you are absolutely wrong.
Yes. Let us know. Tell us.
No, I'll let you know when you're wrong.
I'm always wrong.
Well, that's true. Well, that's true.
Just ask my wife. She'll tell you.
I appreciate you guys for hanging in this tune. And if you have any interest, we have the Hall of Fame Club podcast. It's for Phillies sports. If you have any interest in MLB baseball and the Phillies, we do a weekly podcast, and that's also on Council of Dad Productions. I appreciate it. Have a good one.